And happy Tuesday night, Bills Mafia. That red light is on, which means this week's episode is officially live. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Joe DeRosa. You can find me on Twitter at show_DeRosa. And joining me tonight are these two handsome gentlemen. I got first number one's very own Greg Tompsett and Alex Brasky will be joining us tonight. I got you guys to late. How are we doing? How we feeling? How is the free agency vibe, Greg? I'll start with you. We'll go to you, Alex.
I've got a lot of buying envy, shopping envy. I've got a whole list of guys I wish that the Bills had signed. As I see, I don't mind when overpays happen, but when I see other deals, I'm like, oh man, I would have paid that. I got a lot of envy going on. I'm trying to survive.
What about you, Alex? How you feeling?
Yeah, I think I'm just waiting for the bomb to go off here. I mean, it's kind of been a slow go so far. Only one free agent signed, a lot of in-house stuff going on. So just kind of waiting for that bubble to burst here.
Absolutely. I feel the exact same way. And Nicholas, thank you for joining in. This is super cool to have you from the future listening to and watching us live on YouTube. I appreciate it.
Tomorrow?
Yeah. Can you tell me anything about the stocks? No, I'm just kidding. But guys, this is, it hasn't been the most, if you want to call it energetic time as far as Buffalo Bills free agency transactions, but it definitely feels like the framework of a solid roster is being laid by Brandon Beane and co. So I want to just start out by going over the most, I guess if you want to call it relevant Bills moves that they've made over the past 24 hours. And let's start with bringing back DaQuan Jones. Obviously, a move that everyone wanted to make, a veteran D tackle that you really wanted to keep. You didn't get to see him for a full season last season, and that was shaping up to be one of the best of his career. Greg, I'll start with you. Just give me your thoughts on DaQuan Jones coming back to the Bills, the contract, really everything that goes into this move.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, we were pretty effusive in our praise of DaQuan Jones and across the board at Cover One. So it's no surprise that obviously we were pretty pleased with it. But, I'll be honest, it's never an automatic when you're talking about a guy, getting into his 30s, coming off of, albeit his first real injury. He hadn't really missed a regular season game in 7 years. So he was very, very dependable, but he got injured. And now, coming into his age 32 season. And in those first 4 games or so, it was at such an elite level, it was actually beyond what he had produced in the past. So there was at least a moment where you're like, man, is that just, it was unbelievable. When you looked at the charts that were out there and you had double team rate and pass rush win rate, different things, it was DaQuan Jones and Aaron Donald off by themselves in the corner. And it's amazing. But there was moments where I'm like, all right, is that what made me nervous was what was that going to do to his market? Was somebody going to come out and some, the teams that Washington or Atlanta or somebody like that comes to throw some big and crazy number out there? Were we going to lose him because he got outpriced? So once I saw we survived the first day or so, and it was okay, I think we're going to get by here, and nobody threw crazy money at him. Then all of a sudden I was like, all right, so if it stays in our price range, I'm willing to pay. I'm willing to give some money here. So once I saw that it was, I know I saw it reported as 2 years, 16 million up to 18. I'm sure the first year is probably pretty manageable cap hit. We haven't seen all the details just yet. I feel very, very good about that number. And I think that he's shown that when he's on the field, he's very impactful, makes a huge difference on Ed Oliver, keeping the linebackers clean behind him. It certainly was a worthwhile signing and came in at a number that I felt good about. So that one is definitely one of the biggest pluses so far.
Agreed. Alex, what do you think about this?
Yeah, much of what Greg said. I think it's an affordable deal. 16 million, 10.5 guaranteed. And the way they like to do those deals, they like to ease the cap number in the first of the 2 seasons. So I agree with him there. And he's spot on. DaQuan Jones having the best season of his career, perhaps, over those first 4 games. It's unfortunate. He suffered that pec injury. Who knows what would have came of last year if he was able to be as durable as we've seen him throughout the course of his career. Of course, he missed that playoff game against the Bengals in Buffalo, and that really hurt the Bills in that game. But overall that season, he was healthy. I believe he played in all 16 regular season games, as Greg said. So the beginning of this past season, 15 pressures on 72 pass rush opportunities, 20.8% pressure rate. I mean, that's insane for a one technique inside on the defensive line. So I think getting him back was key going into this offseason. I think that was probably a lot of people's priority number one, and to get that under wraps before the league year officially opens, I think that eased a lot of people's minds. But now I think they're gearing up. They're ready for more now.
Right. Yeah, and I think when you present that point, it definitely feels like the Bills have been standing pat, just wanted to get their guys back and are waiting for that kind of lower tier free agency to start filling the depth with some of the value guys that you could find that are currently on the market. But agree with both of your points. I think DaQuan Jones, again, I said it in a past show, was a no-brainer of a signing. He is a veteran presence, but also a very impactful member of the Bills defensive line. You saw the high caliber of his play in the early part of the year where it looked like he was shaping up to get far more than just $16 million from the Buffalo Bills. And the unfortunate pec injury takes him out. Now you're talking about, well, if we bring him back, what's the money going to look like? And even though it's not as cheap as I was kind of hoping it would be, it's still a very reasonable deal. And if DaQuan Jones's play is as good as it was promised to be in the first part of last season, then I think you're going to get some good value on this contract and ultimately get major contributions from a vet. And if you're talking about potentially drafting a D tackle, then what better person to have in your corner than a veteran like Jones, who can at least, kind of mitigate that buffer between the new player, veteran, and then when he's ready to move on, you got the guy in his place. So I'm all for it.
And that's absolutely what I was going to touch on. I think another element of DaQuan Jones that I failed to mention was the impact he makes for the players around him. You saw Ed Oliver have the best season of his career, and it all started playing alongside DaQuan Jones. And I think he's really progressed as a player playing alongside him these last 2 years. And I think he just makes everybody better around him. And losing Leonard Floyd, and who knows what you're going to get from Von Miller. Greg Rousseau banged up last year. I think having that cornerstone in the middle of the defensive line, I think it's key.
Absolutely. Greg, any final thoughts on this before we move on to another D lineman for the Buffalo Bills? All right. So I started with you, Greg, so I will start with Alex this time. But AJ Epenesa, another signing that I wasn't shocked that they decided to bring him back for. I didn't think it was going to happen so quickly, nor did I think it was going to be for the money that they gave him. I thought, and a lot of people shared this sentiment. AJ Epenesa was going to go out into the free market. He was going to, find some team, maybe needed pass rush help, and was going to work up a pretty sizable contract. And because of his age, because of the fact that he has a lot of experience, but isn't a 32-year-old edge, would probably get a decent amount of money elsewhere potentially, but he comes back to the Buffalo Bills. And I mean, Alex, just talk to me about this move, everything you think about it and your thoughts on what it will do for the roster going forward.
Yeah, reported $12 million. He can earn up to an additional $4 million per season with playtime and sack incentive. So I think it's really a prove-it deal for Epenesa. I think he was comfortable with how he performed this past season. I think he views himself as an ascending player, as do the Bills. Had the highest pressure rate of his career last year at 14.2%. And this doesn't kill the Bills financially. So I think once they learned that Epenesa was willing to come back on a 2-year deal, a young player as it is, and with the financials the way they are, I think they were willing to jump at it, particularly losing Leonard Floyd through free agency. He gave great service to the Bills, but I don't think they ever imagined getting him back. So it's a homegrown player, a player I think they view as an ascending player. And Epenesa, I think, is comfortable going into this season, maybe looking at an extension, perhaps, if he puts forth another season like he did this past one.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Greg?
This one probably is the biggest surprise for me, not in that he came back, but the points you touched on. I had just kind of prepared myself that, all right, we're going to lose AJ Epenesa. And, I kind of had him already as like the number 2 block in my like comp pick bingo formula of like, I know we're going to lose Gabe. He's going to be priced out of our market. He did. He went for right around what I had projected. And then I was like, oh, we're going to lose Epenesa. So it kind of just swapped for him and Leonard Floyd, because last year Floyd was very patient and waited out the market and didn't sign until June. And you never know how much of that is the money and how much of that is, I'm a veteran, I don't really want to do the mini camp crap, and I just want to work out on my own and be at home. So I had kind of just put that in what to expect, that it'll probably just work out that way again, and we'll see where those things come together. I then when this move got announced, it's like, oh my God, how much did we pay? How much did it cost us to bring him back? I was like, oh my God, I hope we did break the bank to bring it, because I like him, but I was nervous because there were some numbers in his advanced metrics where, well, for the number of sacks he have, I'd like a few more pressures and hurries and quarterback hits. There's a few numbers that show he's maybe a little fortunate in the number of sacks that he had. So some of his pass rush win rate numbers are good. There's some advanced metrics that are solid, but there's a few that'll tell you that he probably benefited from some other people's pressure that he cleaned up the sack on. So I was like, that's still worth money. Like, he still creates pressure. He still contributes to the defensive line success, but there's a limit. There's a limit to what I want to pay for that. So once I saw the number, I was like, oh, this is great. All right. This is totally fine. And Alex described it perfectly. And we sent some other people that we may talk about. We built an awful lot of these contracts at, like, hey, here's a reasonable, safe base that you get a little bit of money no matter what. And then if you play great, here's a bunch more money you can make. I'm good with that for anybody. If you ask me in a private moment, every NFL contract should be built like that. All NFL contracts should be like, hey, here's all sports contracts for that matter. Here's a nice chunk of money. And if you play great, here's a bunch more money. Like, because if you play great, of course I want to give you more money. Right. So the fact that they've built these couple contracts that way is a really encouraging start, even if it's not a lot, flashy new names that people were hoping for.
Yeah. And that's, to me, what I really love about this Epenesa contract, apart from the fact that it is a ridiculous amount of value, is just another homegrown player that's coming back to the Bills on a fair deal, but also just someone that the team wanted to get back and he wanted to play for this organization. I don't know the details. I don't know who was reaching out to AJ Epenesa or not, but what I'd imagine is when you see a 25-and-a-half-year-old edge rusher on the market coming off the best season of his career, probably have a good amount of suitors, but he still comes back to the team. What I really love is that you get a young player that you have developed back. You've seen slight improvements from him. So now, not only are you getting him back for that value, but you might also be getting the most insane value akin to what Ed Oliver's contract ended up being last season, because we extend Ed Oliver, ends up having one of the better years of his career. You're talking about looking at his contract compared to the Aaron Donalds and the Quinnen Williams of the league and saying, wow, this value is ridiculous. I love this. Now you might have an opportunity with Epenesa where if he is actually being called upon to get a good amount of reps as a starter, not even just as much of a rotational, but someone that they feel could actually sit on that edge. I don't know if this will actually happen, but talking hypotheticals, it could be some of the best value you'll find for an edge rusher contract in the league. And for that reason, I'm very encouraged. I'm very happy to have him back. Boys, any final thoughts on AJ Epenesa before we carry on to the next person on this list?
No, I think you hit it. Usually sacks equal money. So the fact that he didn't get, somebody didn't splurge on like, oh, look, back-to-back 7-sack seasons. The fact somebody didn't go over the top for that is probably fortunate.
I think there's also a comfortability factor with both of these players. I think Epenesa, the way that his career has gone, and I think he's really hit his peak so far. So I think his comfortability with the team, and DaQuan Jones mentioned it in his press conference right off the get-go. He's comfortable in this system. He's comfortable alongside the guys he's playing. And for a veteran, I think that speaks volumes for somebody like that.
Yes, absolutely. And it's nice to have a familiar presence for the same reasons that I kind of mentioned with DaQuan Jones earlier. If the Bills are interested in drafting an edge rusher in this class at some point, it's just nice to have a familiar face who's worked with McDermott, been in that room with those coaches, someone that you can help acclimate a rookie to the room while also still getting a consistent veteran output, and someone who's, again, improved from year to year. So I'm excited about it. I want to move on to what you could technically consider the biggest news of yesterday, and that's Dion Dawkins signing an extension. He scared the absolute crap out of probably everyone on this panel, everyone in this chat, everyone in Western New York. Whether you thought it was funny or not is totally your prerogative, but Dion Dawkins extended with the Buffalo Bills. Greg, what do you think about this move?
At no point have I ever been more mad at myself for being so terminally online. Like, if I could have just not been online for 5 minutes and I would have just never experienced that middle window of, oh my God, Dion Dawkins is leaving. He's saying goodbye to everybody. And so I'm very pragmatic in the way I look at things. And even if when I get surprised on moves, transactions, whatever it may be, I at least can flip. So like last Wednesday, Although I was sad about a lot of the moves because those guys I had rooted for a long time, and I was kind of hoping we did some, pay cut rework and not release every single one of the guys. I at least could get my head around it of like, I listed them for a reason because we had leverage and they weren't worth the money we were going to pay them. So it needed to come down. And that meant that part of the or else was they were going to cut them. So I couldn't pretend to be upset. But Dion, it made no sense. Like I was how this makes no sense. We're going to eat $11 million on whatever you want to rate him, an above average left tackle at worst, and save $4 million. You can't replace a left tackle on $4 million. Like, what are we doing? So I've never been so mad that I wasted what ultimately was like 5 minutes of real time of
like
my
5
life.
hours.
Yeah.
Like the amount of anguish and mental hurdles I jumped through in that window of why would we do this, to then find out he was just messing with us, just messing around for fun. Obviously I got over it pretty quickly. The new deal is probably a deserved pay raise. He probably deserved more than the $15 million he would get. If you want to quibble about, are we sure that he's going to give us 3 more years of $20 million left tackle play? I don't know. Like he's like I said, he's a good left tackle. He's an above average left tackle. He's probably the 10th to 12th best left tackle in the league. That's what those guys cost. And he keeps Josh Allen clean and is a phenomenal run blocker and an above average pass blocker. And I'm happy that we got him. He helped out the cap for this year. It's all good things. My heart is never going to get the wear and tear back that he cost me over those 5 minutes.
What do you think about it, Alex?
Yeah, I think a lot of people were ready to hold that against him. That's for sure. If there's any turbulence in his play coming up, I think that will be brought up first and foremost, because that's not cool for a player to do. I mean, the fan base lives and dies with a team, and to send out that type of troll knowing what you're doing, it's not right, man. But at the same time, coming from Dion Dawkins, it is what it is. That's kind of his sense of humor. He's really an unpredictable cat, both in his responses to the media and just the way he acts in general. You saw him go off on the Jets player not that long ago on the Shitless podcast. So you really never know what you're going to get from Dion Dawkins. And in this case, what we are going to get is we're going to get more of Dion Dawkins. And I think that's an overall good thing for the Buffalo Bills. I mean, he's really turned into one of the top 5, and Greg said it, maybe top 10 tackles in the league. And I think he's being paid as one of the top 5 tackles in the league now. So I think you're going to get what you pay for with Dawkins. He's been consistent over the course of his career. Maybe a couple of years ago he had some slip-ups, but this past year he really settled in with that entirety of the Bills' offensive line that really performed well. I think the future is bright for Dawkins, and I think they really needed to do this extension in order to get some money off the cap, and now they're cap compliant going into free agency. So we might see some moves coming up and maybe some more restructures or extensions to come, perhaps with Taron Johnson. Maybe you give him $31 million or so over 3 years, make him the highest paid nickel, and you call it a day. But we'll see what happens with that, and we'll see what's down the road. But like I said, you're going to see more of Dion Dawkins, and I think that's a good thing for the Bills and their offensive line, especially losing a leader like Mitch Morse in the center of it all.
Yeah, I was going to say that when you lose Mitch Morse, the last thing you want to see is losing Dion Dawkins, even though if they did pull some sort of transaction, whether it was a trade or something along those lines, I would at least say, well, you know what? They're doing it for a reason. They have to have some sort of plan in place. Maybe they trust their depth. But at face value, when I see the notification of what he posted on his story and him messing with people and saying he's walking, I'm sitting here thinking, damn, dude, are we really doing this? Like, do we really want to rock the boat this much, especially after you let Morse go, but also after what was debatably the best season of line play for Josh Allen while he's been in Buffalo? Like, in my opinion, pass pro, run blocking, it was, not, I mean, by some people at points in the season, it was top in the league, but it was the best Allen has had. So I was saying, why do you want to mess with this? Like, why is this pivot happening now? But it was all smoke. Dion Dawkins playing the Joker on Twitter and Instagram, knew he had us all in his hand, playing a sick prank, and he's back with the Bills, coming off the best season of his career. It was imperative that you locked him down for the next few years. I know some people are upset about the final play with Chris Jones, and he missed Shakir in the touchdown and all that stuff, but that's one play. Dion had a stellar season. Dion is one of your meanest downfield blockers. He's one of your best pass protectors. The rapport he has with Josh Allen is second to none. It would be silly to let that man walk for anything other than someone giving you a first round pick for him or something crazy like that. So
he's become a face of the franchise for an offensive lineman to become a face of the franchise. That shows you the impact that he's had on the franchise since he was drafted. So I think it even goes beyond the playing field with Dion Dawkins with his leadership and everything else.
100%. That you look at the 3 times Walter Payton Man of the Year, now coming up on like his 4th season as a captain, very much. And to have a guy who isn't, like, as Alex touched on, not your stereotypical leader, not even your stereotypical lineman. Linemen are much normally more quiet and stoic and not running around with their shirts off and all the fun
hosting
things.
Dance parties in the locker room.
Correct.
DJ
hosting
sets.
Karaoke dance parties. And honestly, some of the numbers, Alex made me curious for a minute here, so I played around while we were talking. He is like tied for 5th or 6th in average value, but in total, like, so for a veteran, the Bills protected themselves reasonably. He's 17th in total value. He's 16th in guarantees. He's 5th, 6th range in average annual value. So that's all you can ask for, is a guy that, hey, the Bills are rewarding him as one of the better tackles in the league because he has played that way, but they're protecting themselves in that, hey, well, we're also not giving out a ton of money long term. We're just kind of doing it as we go. I think that's all you can ask for in a situation like this.
Absolutely. I'm glad he's here. I'm glad we don't have to live with the reality where we're asking one of these deaf guys to fill in. And that's another thing too, is you kind of play a dangerous game if you turn to your depth in the place of a starter that's been there for a few years. So even though, like, I saw some people being like, well, we don't need him anyway, we'll be fine with our backups. I mean, yeah, maybe, but also I don't want to live in that reality. So I'm not going to pretend we're going to. I'm going to live in this reality where we have Dawkins. So
never go full Ryan Vandermark.
Never. All right. So, guys, I know we're on the home stretch of while I gotcha. So I'm just going to ask you, based on things you've seen so far in free agency from this team, since obviously the moves are limited apart from bringing in the linebacker. I can't even remember his name, Nicholas Morrow. Thank you. I just want to ask you, I'll start with you, Greg. Let's hear just some thoughts on free agency in general, some moves that either you're happy they made that we didn't cover, or something that you think you could see them doing that you're looking forward to. Just really, the floor is yours here.
So obviously I do still think there's moves to be made. I think they're going to be patient. This safety market has been, it was very flooded. There was some initial action. There are some names that have gone by that have hurt my soul. Seeing both the Lohi Gilman and Jeremy Chin go for $5 million and change. I would have done that. I would have done one of those. But there's more guys out there. Yeah, there's still guys out there at safety. So that's what I'm still holding on to, is both safety and wide receiver. I can still rattle off 5 or 6 guys that were on our original list that I'd be okay with. So there's still talent out there. The same thing. I don't know that we're done at edge rusher. I do think that there's a possibility there. There's different pieces where I could still see some movement. So I'm not losing any sleep at that to this point. I will say, I think people are like rushing to judgment just because Nicholas Morrow is the first non-retention player to be added as a new name, and that this is basically an acknowledgement that, yes, PFF's #1 graded overall linebacker is probably going to sign somewhere else. And God bless him. Like, I've apologized about Terrell Dodson enough. I don't need to apologize more. He outplayed every expectation I had. Grading aside, he had a very nice season. He played very, very well. He deserves to be paid as a starter somewhere else. I even went as far as to say he was perfect for the role we needed, because I only want a guy to be, obvious rundown, short yardage, goal line, special teams, coming forward, using his, attacking instincts. That's what he's really good at. I was good with that. Well, Nicholas Morrow can do that. Like, yes, is there film of when the freaking, Sean Desir decided that Nicholas Morrow could be Fred Warner against the 49ers and tried to put him in solo coverage against Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle? Yeah, that didn't go awesome. So if we plan on doing that, if we plan on him replacing Matt Milano and being our number one coverage linebacker, yeah, that's not going to go well, but we're not. We will do the exact same thing we did with Terrell Dotson, where, hey, come be a short yardage goal line coming forward player. And if we need to do that, we'll probably swap you off the field for a third safety when it goes to passing downs. Because why do you think Terrell Dotson put up the PFF grades we did? We used him very intelligently. We put him on the field for what he's good at, and we took him off the field for the things that wouldn't be good. So I have no concerns. I think Nicholas Morrow is just, we don't have to bring AJ Klein off the couch or to cancel any vacations this year. We actually can just have him. And now between Nicholas Morrow, Balen Spector, Dorian Williams, we have linebacker depth. We're good. Maybe we draft a guy and go back to having 6 linebackers again. I don't know. So I'm not like banging the drum of, oh my God, I can't believe we stole Nicholas Morrow, but people getting upset about the fact that we signed a cheap depth linebacker. Settle down, take a breath.
Chill pill, everybody.
Yeah, just take a breath. Take a breath.
Yes. Alex, what do you think? Like, any final thoughts on just really what you've seen from Bills free agency so far? Really things that you want to mention that we might not have mentioned yet on this show?
Yeah, just kind of like Greg said, I wouldn't be too uptight about no moves left to come. You saw it last year with Leonard Floyd, a late signing in free agency, and with Tre'Davious White's cap number set to come off the books a little bit late. I think that could open the door for some late signings as well. So I wouldn't say everything's wrapped up. You got Bean After Dark going on. I think it's about dark right now. So
he's just getting started. He's just waking up.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I was going to say he's nocturnal like a bat in a cave.
Grab a drink. You never know what's going to happen over the next few hours. So I wouldn't fret. So thus far, you only have the one signing with Morrow. Certainly not exciting, but plenty of time left to come before free agency is all said and done.
Yes, I think right now we're seeing all the big ticket names go, and they're going to their teams and they're getting their big money. But when we were approaching free agency, we all had the thought that this was going to be a bit of a frugal year for them. Maybe a couple like quote unquote splashes, which aren't actually on par with some of the bigger signings you've seen in free agency. But I think they're still going to be active. They're still going to try and play some value signings coming in, whether it's tonight or in the coming days. I know free agency last year was a very mixed bag and spread out over the course of time, where some of the more relevant names we saw going into the year came much later on, including one of their better signings, Leonard Floyd, happening in June. I think it was beginning of June. So, right. I mean, with those things, we got to be patient. We're obviously not going to be able to go out and sign Calvin Ridley, as and neither are the Patriots apparently, but we can at least make some value signings coming ahead. And I think they're going to fill the holes in that regard with some cheaper deals and try to address the rest. And to be honest, that's kind of how I wanted them to attack it anyways. So I'm not mad at how they've done it so far. Again, it sucks to miss out on maybe Jeremy Chin or, Alohi Gilman or any of these guys that you were anticipating being really strong suitors for the Bill, or I'm sorry, strong suitors that the Bills could go after that might be good positional fits, but they have their homes now. We can't dwell on it. We just got to see what lies ahead and hope that whatever Bean decides to do is something that's going to benefit the team in the season, whether it's as depth or as a surprise, which we have seen before. So I know you guys got to run. Greg, again, I'll let you outro yourself. Alex, I'll let you do the same right after. Where can the people find you? What you got going on? What's going on?
So I specifically asked Brandon Bean not to make any of the big signings until just before my show tomorrow night. So come and join Aaron and I Wednesday night at 9:00. I promise the Bills will do all their big signings right before then, and then Aaron and I will break all those down with us tomorrow night.
Alex, what about you, man?
Yeah, the Batavia Daily News. We're keeping up with the free agency coverage, pumping it out as it comes. I'd like a little bit of a break tonight, but hey, if a big signing comes, I'm ready for it.
Can we get no more like 12:45 a.m. signings?
Right. Fortunately, I was awake for that. I was able to get a DaQuan Jones article out that was already for today's newspaper, but so I was fortunate in that regard. But also Bills Digest, Greg contributed a couple of issues ago. We've lightened the load a little bit. We have a gentleman who does a lot of our free agency and draft stuff, so it's really lighting the load for me, but we'll have Greg back involved, Joe Marino, Chris Brown, AJ Sobolski, a lot of people involved with Bills Digest, and a lot of coverage to come as the Bills head toward another critical year.
Right on, gentlemen. Well, listen, Guys, if you aren't following Greg and Alex on Twitter, I implore you to do so now. Some of the greatest people you could follow in the Bills community, Cap Wizard, Transaction Wizards, guys that keep up with the team very closely and give you all the up-to-date info you needed. Gentlemen, your time is very much appreciated. I know it's been hectic for both of you, so just thank you for being here. Again, providing your insight. You are always welcome back. I hope that we have a wonderful Tuesday night and maybe some more news breaks, maybe while I'm still live here for all of you and before Greg's show, and that we have a fun free agency. But remember, it's not the end of the world if they don't do much. But either way, guys, thank you again. Have a great night, and I'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
For sure. All right, friends, it is just me for the rest of the evening. There are about 1,600 viewers, so this isn't scary at all, but I appreciate y'all so much for being here. This has been a lot of fun to talk about. I got a couple of more thoughts for you guys before I sign off for the evening, but while I am rambling, while I am trying to give you my best here, I'm going to ask you to do a couple of things. The first thing is, if any news at all breaks while I am live and not looking at my phone, please spam the chat. It could be anything relevant or anything Bills focused. Of course, if the Bills decide to cut Josh Allen in 5 minutes, that's not going to happen. Let me know. The other thing I'm going to ask you to do is please drop a like on this video if you could be so kind. It really helps not only myself out, but our channel out. It makes things great for our network as it allows more eyes to find our channel, find our content, and be able to watch what we got going on, read what we got going on. And the third thing I'm going to ask you to do is envision if Greg was still on the show to actually read the one pass read, but I'm going to let you guys find out a little bit more about the one pass. So I'm going to ask Greg and Aaron, what do you got?
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
Yes, become one today for 60 gold doubloons. You can become a One Pass member. I cannot stress this enough. The One Pass is the lifeblood of Cover One that allows us to have access to all of the resources that this network can have to find any statistics, data, maybe things that can help me not stutter when I'm live, as well as film. And if you subscribe to it, you will get access to the premium Slack channel. There are a lot of excellent, knowledgeable, kind Bills fans in that chat that have discussion every single day. And in the peak of free agency right now, we have some of the funniest, most cathartic discourse going on. So if you are interested, the link is in the description below. I really encourage you to check it out. And Hugo, yes, cue the rambling man. It's just me for the rest of the evening, guys. I'm probably going to go for another 10, 15. If I go longer than that, then don't hold it against me. But I want to bring up one thing that I saw was going on in the chat tonight. Before we went live, I saw you guys commenting about it, but that's the Jordan Poyer signing. It's got to be brought up. It's a relevant topic. I know he just signed with the Miami Dolphins for a year, $2 million. I just want to say this. The first thing, I know there's going to be some hostility, some animosity towards Jordan Poyer because he's signing with the division rival, and this isn't coming from everybody, but I have seen a few people that feel a little bit snake-bitten about it. I get it. It's Miami. We hate Miami. We don't want to see a beloved player that's been a valuable, integral part of this defense for the better part of, honestly, more than half a decade, go to this team that we all hate so much. But Jordan Poyer was a pro, someone that gave his body and soul to this team, someone that absolutely put every little bit of energy into being a top-tier safety for this team. I don't want to see any negatives about that. And specifically Poyer here, because Hyde obviously retired. I don't want to, we don't have to talk about Hyde. I wish him the best, obviously. But I just don't think it's worthwhile to get worked up over Jordan Poyer signing. It's kind of the same mindset I had with Barkley and the Giants, even though it's a little bit different of a situation. This guy was really just someone that you'll look fondly on his time in Buffalo and see how much of the success that the Bills had, whether it was the Josh Allen era, was in part because of the stability he brought to the safety position. And last season, when he dealt with the injuries but tried to play through them and obviously dropped off a bit as a result, but still was on the field, still was effective at times. And this season where you saw him kind of lose a step but still be an effective member of that secondary, line up in the box and contribute there. Those are all things that I'm going to remember with Jordan Poyer's time in Buffalo. And even though he's playing in the Dolphins, and even though we're going to be seeing him for, twice a year, maybe even in the playoffs if Miami's good enough to go this season, I'm still going to have infinite respect for the guy. So all I ask is to anyone who might feel a bit jaded by this, don't be jaded. It's we didn't bring him back. The Buffalo Bills decided to let Jordan Poyer go, and Jordan Poyer got an opportunity in his home state with a team that had interest in him last season, and he's playing for him. And if it's the last year of his career and he's pulling a Thurman on us, then so be it. But I am not having any animosity to Mr. Jordan Poyer at all. I wish him all the best. He's been a great friend of the network. He's been someone that has been very active in the Bills community, has done some really great things in Western New York. So I have all the love, respect in the world for that guy, and I hope he has a great time in Miami in all but the games against the Buffalo Bills. So those are my final thoughts on Jordan Poyer. Guys, again, if you have any free agency suggestions or things that you want them to do still, I implore you to please leave them in the comments below. I'm just going to go over a couple of more names before I wrap it up for the evening, because there was one name in particular that we did not go over that I wanted to get to. That's Taylor Rapp. And now Taylor Rapp's an interesting case, because I remember when we did our free agency show a few weeks ago, he was a name I had on my list because I thought Taylor Rapp was a pretty solid contributor for the Bills defense in the second half of the season. I think he's a physical guy. You could put him in the box if you want to. He had his lapses in coverage, but I really do think that was a big part of kind of him working into the system and getting used to the communication with these guys in the secondary, being on a new team. Things that you can kind of just see when you're talking about the load that you put on a safety in this defense. When the second half of the year started kicking in and he was getting his playing time and getting rotated in more, I thought he was playing really well. And of course, he had some signature moments, including the interception on Tua in the final game to clinch the division. I was all for bringing Taylor Rapp back. But what's interesting to me is the fact that they decided to go with multiple years on it. I thought Rapp would probably be a one-year signing, someone that you kind of add for stability to have in this room while bringing in people in the draft. And while I do still think that's the case, I think the Bills really do value Rapp in their defense. I think they want to see him maybe maintain a role, if that's the third starter or whether that's someone that actually is playing opposite a rookie safety. Then they definitely had enough of an admiration for Rapp and the way he played down the stretch to continue to, see what he can do in the secondary. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what Taylor Rapp brings in year 2 with the Buffalo Bills. Again, he's only 26 years old. He has a lot of experience. He played on the Super Bowl Rams. There's a lot to like about Taylor Rapp's game. I think he's incredibly physical. I think he can really be beneficial if you put him in that Jordan Poyer role this season, if you do add some safeties around him. So I'm all for this re-signing. I know the money seemed a bit much, but it's not as bad when you look at the actual contract and how they spread it out over the next few years. So I'm happy with it. I can't complain one bit about Taylor Rapp coming back. I want to go to the next one, which is David Edwards. And I talked to a few people when this David Edwards signing happened, and I distinctly remember being like, oh, hell yeah, we got our depth back. Like Chris Thomas and I, we all talked about David Edwards coming back to this team. We all said, oh man, that's great. Even with Bates gone, it's clear that they're going to have him, slide in if they need him to slide in. They're going to have him come in and be that versatile depth piece if they need him. And then they cut Mitch Morse. And we realize now that their plans for Mr. Edwards are much bigger than what we were expecting them to do initially. And while I still have faith in David Edwards to maintain that guard role, I was not prepared for them to actually say he was competing for the starting guard role and that they were going to kick McGovern over to center. Now, McGovern had an excellent season last year in pass pro, and he did really well as a run blocker too, which was a concern of his game coming into Buffalo. He ends up having one of the best years of his career, if not the best. They have enough faith in Connor McGovern to slide over to the center role. With the money he's making, it's a pretty good value. I know they just restructured him too to help with the cap. But having Edwards take that guard spot is really interesting to me. It's something that I'm going to keep my eye on. But on the other side of the coin, and I say this for the fans like myself who are a bit nervous about it, Aaron Kromer is a top-tier offensive line coach. You have seen the transformation of the Buffalo Bills offensive line while he's gotten there. And the most tangible evidence of this, apart from seeing the best year of Dion Dawkins' career and seeing the left side of the line become fortified with adding McGovern and obviously having Morris, is the development of Osiris Torrance as a rookie and the development of Spencer Brown, which we were all, I stand on this for everyone in the chat that sees this show on a weekly basis, myself included, members of Cover One, we were all nervous about Spencer Brown in this season and whether he would take that step forward or not. Aaron Kromer proved that he could help develop him. He had the best year of his career. It wasn't this, Pantheon best right tackle in the league season, but it was good enough to bring stability to the line. So even though it is a bit of a shock that we lose Morris, and it's a bit of a shock that McGovern's going to slide there, and now Edwards is competing for that guard spot, assuming that they don't bring in a veteran to compete with him, or if they don't bring in a draft pick that they might see with more upside, or rely on someone in the depth. I do have faith that Kromer sees Edwards as a viable starter, and we also have to remember he was a starter on the Super Bowl Rams too. I mean, there's experience there. They have a rapport. He's seen him play at his best. He's seen what David Edwards can bring to the table. I think Edwards filled in really nicely when they did those jumbo sets. Obviously, you might have to find a new body to fill that role, but I like it in that regard. Will it work? We're going to have to see. But the fact is, they brought David Edwards back to potentially be a starting guard for a very reasonable deal. And for that reason, I am going to say I trust Aaron Kromer. And God, I hope that we don't come back to this in like a year or 6 months where I am praising, or at least half praising, the move and regretting it. So I put myself on the line there. I apologize. I'll talk about a couple of other moves here. Cam Lewis, this is one that I saw them doing. I didn't think he was going to be expensive. I didn't think he was going to have too many suitors on the market. I really didn't think it was going to be anything more than, well, we want to have depth in the room. We want to have someone with corner safety versatility. And with Saran Neal getting cut, to me, it was telling me, all right, I think they like Cam Lewis enough to fill in, maybe even be the backup nickel if they don't decide to draft one, like the kid from Michigan or something along those lines. But what I also really like about Cam Lewis is, again, someone who has been in the room for multiple seasons. I know we all look back at the Justin Jefferson play last season and Cam Lewis in coverage and makes the incredible catch, and people were snake bitten by that move. But Cam Lewis is what you want when you're talking about a depth option on the Bills. Someone that can fill in for multiple positions. Heaven forbid you lose one of Rasul Douglas or Benford, or maybe you lose Taron Johnson, or maybe you lose a safety. Is it going to be the best high caliber play? No, but your depth isn't supposed to be better than your starters. This is a guy that can fill in at multiple spots, and you're paying him a reasonable contract. I'm all for this move. I'm glad they brought Cam back. I think Bills fans should be glad he's back, but I also don't think Cam Lewis is ever going to be called upon to be a starter on this team. I think his role is serving on depth, maybe special teams work, and we go from there. So those are my thoughts on that. Last one is Quentin Morris. I don't really have too much to say about it other than welcome back. He's good for one super clutch touchdown every season since he's been here. He's got Miami under his belt. He's got the Giants game last year. So do me a favor, go to the schedule. Find a game that you think Quentin Morris would have a clutch touchdown in. Use your gut on this one, because for some reason you forget he's on the field, and then out of nowhere he's coming through with one of the most integral touchdowns of the game. So I'm happy he's back. And I do think that the Bills tight end room right now is set. And I'm really encouraged by it for a few reasons. One of them being, one, year two of Dalton Kincaid. Dalton Kincaid had an excellent rookie season. Pretty much everything I expected from him. I'm expecting another leap forward this year. I'm also expecting them to lean heavily on him as being either the second or third option passing-wise in this Bills offense. So I'm looking forward to seeing his continued development. But also, another reason I'm tying this into free agency, Dawson Knox took a pay cut. And I think I watched Anthony's show a couple weeks ago, and I remember the episode topic was about players that got to step up, and Dawson Knox was one of his biggest ones, because Dawson Knox's contract was a very hefty contract for the tight end output you were getting from him, which was extremely underwhelming. Now, injuries have hampered Dawson Knox. I think when Knox is healthy, he's still a very valuable red zone threat and someone that has come through in some key moments. But even last year, despite the injury and despite coming back from it, just didn't feel like he ever was his same old self. And also, while he's out, Dalton Kincaid, who you draft in the first round, is taking the role of tight end 1 and running with it. So you don't want to pay him that much money. And I'm very appreciative, especially for the Bills' sake, of Knox taking that pay cut and being able to have the flexibility, not only for this free agency, but also to be able to not have to have that monkey on your back of, well, we're paying Knox this much money, we're doing this with Knox. I'm sure it's not paying him dirt cheap anymore. We'll find out more of the details ideally later in the week, but you're still seeing that kind of, well, we want to make a concerted effort to kind of adjust the value because maybe the expectations are going to adjust for him in this position. So for that reason, I'm really encouraged by it, because him as a tight end 2 opposite of Kincaid, and now hopefully getting a contract that's reflecting tight end 2, is something that I think will benefit not only the team, but him. Because maybe a little less pressure on the guy could help the guy find his stride this season. Maybe there won't be as much dependence on him, where an injury isn't going to be seen as a thing that you truly roll your eyes at because you're paying him so much money. And this allows more of an establishment of something I wanted, which is, again, Kincaid to be that really featured target. And something I wanted to bring up, if the Bills aren't hyperactive in free agency with finding a veteran receiver, I think they're going to, because they got to find bodies, but not hyperactive in the sense that they're not paying Curtis Samuel to fill the role or finding someone else reliable. They're not making any sort of splashes. And if they go into the draft and they're not really using first or maybe even second round pick on receiver, that is going to be a very telling sign, at least to me, that they have a lot of faith in Dalton Kincaid and Khalil Shakir. Because Khalil Shakir stepped up big for them. And while I am in the camp of I want to see this team find receiver in free agency and the draft, I think Shakir has earned the right to get more snaps, to be more leaned on, to maybe take the starting slot role if you do decide to go for a boundary option in the draft. And I think that the team would be telling you, at least in a very not direct way, that they want to lean on the guys that they have developed over the years. And with Dalton Kincaid taking in the first round, last season, I think that's another thing where you're going to see them lean on him a heavy amount this year to a point where it might not be as much of a dependence on trying to find a true boundary threat if they think that this guy is someone that they're going to feed the ball to. So just wanted to make that little point on the tight end room. And last but not least, I just want to go over a couple of these restructures. Obviously, Josh Allen, that was a big one. I mean, we all knew that was going to be brought into his contract, so I'm very pleased that they actually pulled the trigger on it. It wasn't the max restructure, which I thought was an interesting wrinkle, because now you're going to not really kick the can down the road too much. His cap hit over the next few years is pretty reasonable, with next season just being the tough year, but you had to have a tough year at some point anyways. So let it be down the road where after you had a draft of, whether it's 8 to 11 picks, a lot of young money on the books that you're probably going to end up paying with the offset from Trey White getting cut, where it might not matter as much if Josh is getting an uber amount of money, because you're talking about having a plethora of young talent not getting paid a lot of money, so you can take that buffer to the chin while you're depending on your draft. Again, this depends on how Brandon Beane does in the draft this season, but still something where I feel it makes the most sense to just, rip the Band-Aid off next season and move on. And then we talk about Rasul Douglas taking one. I don't know truly what it's going to lead to. To be honest with you, I thought Douglas was going to extend before they would ever restructure him. But again, more money on the books, kind of kicking the can a little bit. It seems that they're comfortable with doing that with Douglas if they decide that they want to keep him around for another season. Douglas was beyond exceptional in the second half ever since we traded for him last season. I am curious to see how much of the fundamental shift, or whatever that ends up looking like for the Bills defense after adding a day and having Babbage be the DC, affects Douglas, because Douglas is a really good zone corner. And I know he's had his lapses in man-to-man, although he's also played well in it. I just want to see what he looks like with this change in the defensive philosophy, if it's anything significant. If it's not, and they do decide to run what they've been running to an extent of just a few minor wrinkles, then it's a no-brainer to keep Douglas around. And if there is an extension somewhere down the road, I'm all for it. And again, these are two. I know Connor McGovern was one that got announced. Again, a no-brainer for me. McGovern has been excellent. He's someone that if they're going to kick him over to center now, I understand the why, because his pass pro is stellar. And maybe you want him to take over that role because he's just younger than Mitch Morse. He's got plenty of prime left in his career, and maybe an opportunity to get a little more versatile in how you do things on the O-line. Again, when you bring Edwards to that spot, maybe if you want to open yourself up to taking one of these offensive linemen in the draft, you have more of a justification to do so. It is rocking the boat a little bit to make him a center, but I'm happy that they're keeping McGovern around. I love the signing last year, and I'm going to trust Cromer on this one again to take over that spot, or at least have enough faith to say, I think McGovern could do well here. So there's that one. And I believe Ed Oliver was restructured, and his contract, again, the value you're getting on Ed Oliver is insane, and I'm very pleased with how he's played for the Bills. I know there were some gripes about his playoff performance, but I'm not going to use a one-game sample size to critique Ed Oliver's really, really good season. It is a valid thing to say, well, he needs to step up in those moments, but when you're playing with a, not 100% linebacking core to help clean things up, when you're playing with a not 100% DaQuan Jones, it's one of those things where, I do want to see more out of you when you're being asked to kind of step up, whether it's your pass rushing ability or your run defense in a playoff game. But Ed's been stellar. He's been playing the best ball since he got that contract. I'm excited to see more of him, and I'm happy that they could make it work to open some things up in the cap. And I want to just talk about the Von Miller pay cut, because this is one that I know you guys have heard it, but I genuinely was stunned, because when I saw reworked, I just figured restructure, they're just I didn't want him to touch his contract. They very clearly need the money. They're desperate. Let's make it happen. The fact that he takes a pay cut for the team, it's another thing that I think you can equate to the Knox situation. Miller is making this exceptional amount of money from a huge deal because you banked on him playing like the Von Miller you've seen for the past decade. And for 8 games in 2022, that's exactly what you were getting. But post ACL tear, Von Miller was not living up to the contract at all. Now, I've said I was hoping he'd get healthy. He obviously wasn't 100% coming off that injury. So the expectations on him, I think, outweighed the results. And he wasn't himself until probably the very end of the season when you saw a few flashes. So I was dreading seeing him trying to be dependent on for the money he was making. And he is really just not, I don't think he's, in my realistic opinion, just my personal opinion, I don't think Von is ever going to be the Von that you saw, even if you want to call it 5 years ago. But I think Von can still be a quality option, especially if you're talking about putting him in on a rotation, if you draft young edge talent, if you add in another free agent to the room. And because of that, to see him take a pay cut to bank on finding himself again, to bank on becoming that consummate professional pass rusher that can just blow up a play on any given notice, to have the incentives worked into his deal where each sack or each grouping or cluster of sacks is giving him a few more million each time. I absolutely love this idea. I absolutely love that they made this work, because, hey, if it doesn't work out, he took a significant pay cut that's not absolutely brutalizing your cap. And it changes the whole complexion of how you can look at Von Miller in this defense. But then if we're talking about Von actually plays to his potential like he did 2 seasons ago, and he actually has winning and has a high pass rush win rate and is collecting a bunch of sacks and is changing the complexion of the D line, it's worth it to pay him that much money. It's worth it to give him the millions of dollars, because this is a contract that you gave him. This is the money that you would pay to an edge rusher. So I am more than relieved that we saw pay cuts for both Knox and Miller. I don't agree with this one. I'm sorry I haven't been throwing your comments up and I'm riffing here, so I'm just, kind of by myself, man, in the whole thing. But I don't know if I totally agree with this, because on one hand, yes, I do think that one thing for Von being, as long as he's been in the league and as experienced as he has, one thing that he could benefit from is a more consistent lean in being able to be on the line more often, not having to sub out as often, and being able to get more and more and more reps into a point where maybe you do see him progress. But the rotation to me was also a part of snap count, being able to work him back in, not putting too much strain on his knee immediately, and making sure that you just got this guy back. I don't want to have any sort of risk of him re-aggravating the injury, going out for a stretch of games, basically putting him back at square one and having to do this whole thing over again. And I think if you see flashes from Von in training camp, preseason, any indication that his form is back to what it was, the explosiveness, the bend is there again, then I do think that they'll lean on him a bit more. They'll cut down on how often they rotate him, and they will try to let him become a cornerstone, because that's what you signed him for. And you saw them doing that with him. So I don't want to say that they won't rotate him anymore, but what I will say is Von is a guy that obviously doesn't want to be in this position. I think the pay cut was honestly a self-aware move to bet on himself and try to make the best of his career happen again. I understand the sentiment, but truthfully, I think the rotation was necessary working off the injury. And if he returns to old Von Miller form, I think he'll get a higher percentage of the snaps, leaned on a bit more, and will be a huge benefit to the Buffalo Bills D-line. So I guess the only other thing I'm going to talk about again is really the only major Bills external news from today, which is Nicholas Morrow. And listen, I thought Terrell Dodson was going to walk. I never thought he was going to come back. I think Dodson had the best year of his career. He shut a lot of us up. He played really well down the stretch and run defense. He was shooting gaps very aggressively, and I was very pleased to see it. I obviously still had my suspicions about him in pass coverage, but with Bernard being there and having Johnson and kind of offsetting that side of the line, he was playing really well. So I think Terrell Dodson earned his contract. I hope he gets a nice bag from somewhere and can enjoy the rest of his career. But you had to fill the role, and this is the guy to do it. I don't think Bills fans should see this as anything more than just a depth signing, someone that, heaven forbid, we see another linebacker go down. This guy is experienced, playing for the Bears, playing for the Eagles, playing as a green dot. I know he wasn't good in coverage, but it's a great point to be made about, and I think Greg mentioned this earlier, the transition from one team to another and how a team can look at your skill set and say, hey, it might not have been him, but rather the scheme he was in, putting him in a position to fail. Let's try to play to his strengths. And Bobby Babich is the defensive coordinator of this team now. He was the linebackers coach prior to this. He saw insanely positive results from the players that he was personally working with, in Terrell Bernard, in Terrell Dodson. Obviously, Matt Milano was Matt Milano, but he still had his voice and was still working with him. And even Balin Spector had flashes. So if there is a concern about how this guy played on the Eagles, I get it, because the Eagles defense as a whole was very lackluster last season. But think of it as we have a young, budding defensive coordinator who essentially everything he's touched has turned to gold. At least most things have. Apparently, one of the highlights of Nicholas Morrow's game is his pass rushing ability, and we do have a very aggressive defensive coordinator and head coach that want to send pressure at you. So if that's what this guy excels in, maybe there's some sub packages that play to his strength. And maybe if you're talking about, well, we want to run a 4-3, and maybe we want to blitz out of it, and maybe we don't want Dorian Williams here, and maybe we don't go for a rookie, then this is a guy you could put there. And even though it might be a little gimmicky, if he's good at what he does, then I'll take it. So it's depth. I don't think it's anything more than that. I don't think Bills fans got to go crazy, but I do understand the sentiment is, as far as wanting more free agents, I get it. I've been going stir crazy all day. I've been going nuts. I was really hoping that today, in this past weekend, apart from some of the big moves that they've made to bring their guys back, which I'm very pleased with, there'd be a few more free agency signings. But like they've mentioned, like they've kind of ushered before they left the show, Alex and Greg, I think more moves are coming. I think Brandon Beane is playing the patient waiting game. I think he is here to try and make sure that the value is there for the guys he wants to sign, and we could see that coming soon. So I will answer this question from Dan, and then I'm going to wrap it up this evening, which is question, do you know what Babich is going to run? I have no clue. I think McDermott was at the combine recently, and they asked him about this, and he said they're still deciding on who's calling the plays. But I can't imagine they're going to stray too far from their base nickel that they do, as much as I think you're going to see a little bit of an increase in percentage of some of the wrinkles they could possibly run, whether they want to take Taryn off the field and go with a more traditional 4-3, maybe some different alignments with their defensive line at the start, maybe running a bit more cover one, no pun intended, because they brought in a guy from Miami, and he was known to be in a system that was running that a ton. I do think one of the things that I'm very much banking on seeing them do is running situational man a bit more, having more man coverage, getting corners that play to that strength a bit more, and also, most importantly, finding a safety that is going to be good at that as well in a one-high system. And there are a few of them in this draft, and one of them was coached by a guy at Miami, and his name is Cam Kinchins. And I don't know, man. I have this, as the days go on, I have a sneaky suspicion that Kinchins is a guy that is heavily on the Bills' radar. I don't know if it would be at 28, but it seems like a no-brainer draft if you're talking about finding an athletic safety. I know he didn't test well. I know he did not test well, but this guy on tape is a dog. And I am very, very much excited if they do decide to go in that direction to see what he would bring. So to answer your question in an absolutely long-rounded way, Dan, I don't know specifically what they're going to run, but I can't imagine it would be that much different apart from a few more wrinkles that you might see and maybe some more man coverage situations. I hope I answered that well for you. But guys, I really do appreciate all of you watching here tonight. I appreciate you letting me ramble for all of you. I know free agency hasn't been the absolute back-to-back Bills moves that you would want to see, but they've made some savvy moves. They've done some solid restructures, some pay cuts that we very much needed, some re-signings that we very much needed. And I think that the news cycle, as far as what the Bills are going to do, is only going to come in the coming days, and we're going to see at least some intriguing names. I know you guys know that one of the names I've mentioned in the past is Ezekiel Elliott. I'm still holding out hope that they might turn to him to be the running back too. But I will say, okay, I want to answer this last one because Dan says, who from the remaining safeties left do you want us to get at cover one? I would love Simmons or Kinchins in the draft. So yes, I agree with Kinchins. I would love Simmons. I don't know how realistic Simmons is. I think he's going to get a bag. Like I really do. I don't think that he's going to come cheap or he's going to come at a value that would be something that the Bills would be willing to pay if it's a 1-year contract. I think, he might get money that you're seeing akin to the top safeties in this market. Like, I know he's 30, but McKinney level or maybe a CJG level, like that kind of money. I just don't know if the Bills are going to shell that out when safety, as big of a need as it is also kind of at an abundance in this draft. And maybe they want to get younger at that position. I would love it because he's an absolute dog. We've seen the body of work from Denver, but I don't think he's someone that I expect them to sign, but I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again if they do it. I mean, the only one really that I could say, or I guess couple that I'd be okay with is Edwards from Kansas City or Curl from Washington. Again, just guys that I feel like could fill that role that we're leaving behind without Micah Hyde, a bit well, or if someone you want to go a little bit more of a physical route or someone that's played in a more man system. Like Edwards is probably the one that I would want the most. So I'm going to say him. I think he's realistic. He's 27 years old. I think he's going to be 28 in May. So just an option there. But really, I mean, I'm at a point now where if they bring in any safety, I'm going to be kind of happy with it because I will at least understand, that it's got to be, kind of thrift shopping for one, and whoever they get, I just hope that they can plug in or at least be quality depth. So I'm going to leave it there, guys. It's 8:32. Coming up at 9 o'clock, it is Anthony Prohaska with Disguise Coverage. I implore you all, I see there's a ton of you watching tonight. Thank you all so much for tuning in and letting me speak here. But if you are on YouTube, if you are on Twitter, if you are on any place that streams Cover One, check his show out. He's on in less than 30 minutes. He's going to be doing an episode, I believe, with Joe Marino. So check it out. It is very much worth your time. But for me, guys, I'm going to sign off. Before I do, just again, thank you so much. I really appreciate all of you guys watching, checking this out, being here, commenting, engaging. It means the world. Please, on your way out, if you can do me a favor, drop a like on the stream. It would mean the world to me. It's not often I go alone, so to be able to do it tonight, it's not something I'm totally comfortable with, but you guys make it a lot more seamless when you engage. So I truly appreciate it. I'm going to go eat dinner. I'm going to go hope that the Bills make a move. And if they don't, then I'm going to go to bed and hope they do it in the morning. But all of you guys have a wonderful Tuesday evening. I will see you soon. Take care and go Bills.